They wheeled him in just after midnight. The storm outside hadn't let up for hours, rain pelting against the windows, thunder growling like a wounded beast. Most of the hospital was quiet, save for the occasional intercom buzz, or the click of my nurse's shoes echoing down the dimly lit corridor. But when I saw the stretcher roll past the nurse's station, I felt it. A strange pull. There was something about the man lying motionless beneath the soaked navy blanket. Tall frame, bandaged head, and a stillness too heavy for someone alive. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that man, would change my life forever. My name is Isla, a trauma nurse, 29, no family, no roots, no backup plan, just a battered car, a cluttered apartment, and a heart that hadn't figured out how to stop caring, despite everything. I'd seen hundreds of patients in comas, gunshot victims, car crash survivors, stroke patients, but something about him, his stillness wasn't just medical, it was haunted. He came in with no ID, Dr. Howard said, flipping through his chart. Car accident, massive head trauma, no alcohol in his system, no drugs. But the car he was in? A custom Bentley SUV, estimated value, $500,000. I blinked. He's rich? We're assuming. But until he wakes up, we've got nothing. No name, no next of kin, no record of admission. It's like he dropped out of the sky, room 203. That's where we put him. The VIP wing, private, quiet. I volunteered for his care schedule. I told myself it was because he was high risk and complicated, and I was experienced. But the truth? I just couldn't leave him alone. Days passed. He didn't wake. I cleaned him, turned him, checked his vitals, monitored his EEG, and read notes, aloud just in case he could somehow hear. It became a routine. "Good morning," I'd whisper, fluffing his pillow. Then, "Weather's nice today. I think it rained out all the sadness." And sometimes, on hard nights, I'd sit beside his bed and talk about my life, about how I got kicked out of nursing school once, not because I failed, but because I skipped too many classes working night shifts to pay for my mom's chemo, about how she died anyway, and how I'd spent the last 6 years patching other people's lives together, hoping it would make the ache stop. Weeks turned into months. I never missed a shift. Other nurses called me crazy. "He's a vegetable," they'd whisper. "You're wasting your time." But I couldn't walk away, because somehow I saw something in his silence, a storm beneath the calm, a scream buried so deep it couldn't find the surface. Then one morning, everything changed. It started with a flicker. Barely there. His fingers moved, just once. Then stillness again. I stared so long I thought I imagined it. But 2 days later, during the nightly sponge bath, his eyelids fluttered. For half a second. Like a tremor before an earthquake. I called the doctor. They ran scans, tested responses, but everything came back inconclusive. "He may be emerging," Dr. Howard said. "Or it could just be neurological noise. Don't get your hopes up." But I did, because that night, as I sat beside him reading from a worn paperback, I heard it. A sound, a whisper, a single, breathless word. "Stop." I froze. The book fell from my hands. "Say that again," I begged, my heart thundering. But his eyes stayed shut, his lips motionless. Had I imagined it? Was I finally cracking? The next day I played a gamble. I brought in music, soft, slow jazz, and then Chopin, and then silence. I sat with him for hours, trying to detect something, anything. That's when his hand moved again. This time, not just a twitch, but a deliberate curl of the fingers. I grabbed it. Hey, I'm here. You're safe." His lips parted slightly. A groan escaped. I buzzed the team, ran a full check. That night, we listed him as emerging. But as his body came back to life, I started to see the scars. Not just physical ones. His knuckles were raw, old bruises faded along his ribs. He'd lived a rough life before the crash, and he had nightmares. He'd thrash in his sleep, whimper. Once he gripped the bedsheet so hard he tore it, but when I touched his arm, just gently, he calmed. That's when I realized I wasn't just caring for a patient anymore. I was anchoring someone drowning in something darker than medicine could fix. 3 weeks later, he opened his eyes fully. I was adjusting the IV when I felt it. His gaze. I turned, and for the first time stared into storm-gray eyes filled with confusion, pain, and something else. Recognition? "Good morning," I whispered, breath caught. He blinked, his lips parted, and with a voice broken by months of silence, he whispered, "Isla?" I stumbled back. "How do you know my name?" He looked around, dazed. "I heard you. In the dark. You kept talking." I listened, my heart twisted. "You were awake?" "Not always," he rasped. "But when I could, your voice was the only thing that made me feel real." I choked on a sob. "What's your name?" I asked. He hesitated, and then, barely audible, "Callum." The name hit like thunder in my chest. Callum Rhodes, the name I'd seen once on a Forbes cover years ago. Tech billionaire. Disappeared. From the public eye after a scandal. Rumors said he vanished to escape investors. Others claimed he died. And yet, here he was, in room 203. The man I had cleaned, spoken to, cried beside, was one of the richest men in the country. But none of that mattered now, because in that moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man, trying to come back to life, and somehow, I was the first person he reached for. I should have felt intimidated. The man lying in bed before me, now looking at me with fragile, haunted eyes, was Callum Rhodes. Once the golden boy of Silicon Valley, founder of Nexora, the software empire that had reshaped global communications. A billionaire before 30, a ghost by 33. But in that stark hospital room, under fluorescent lights and surrounded by the faint scent of antiseptic, Callum wasn't a tycoon. He was broken, raw, and somehow trusting me. He couldn't remember much, only flashes, boardrooms filled with shouting men, a stormy night, a hand gripping a steering wheel too tight, a sickening crash. He didn't even know what city we were in. When I told him it was Seattle, his face crumpled. "My company's in Palo Alto," he murmured. "I should be somewhere else." I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Why was he driving alone? Why was he off the grid? What had happened to Nexora? But I didn't, because I saw it in his eyes. The trauma ran deep. If I pushed too hard, I'd lose him all over again. Rehabilitation started slowly. He couldn't walk at first. His muscles had atrophied. I helped him sit upright, held him steady as he tried to take steps, encouraged him with every painful inch of progress. He fell. He cursed. He cried. So did I. But every time he collapsed, he'd grit his teeth, look up at me and say, "Again." That single word, "again," became our war cry. We kept his identity a secret. The hospital still listed him as unidentified male, room 203. I knew it wouldn't last forever. One facial recognition scan, one curious visitor, and the media would descend like vultures. But for now, this secret bubble was ours. He liked to sit by the window during sessions. One rainy afternoon, I found him staring out over the city skyline. IV still taped to his arm. "Do you believe in second chances, Isla?" he asked. I paused. I used to. Now I believe in people who make them. He looked at me like I'd just unlocked something inside him. Then, he said softly, "I lost everything. I was on my way to die that night. I froze. Wait, what do you mean?" He looked down, face hollow. "I wasn't just driving. I was running. From investors, from lawsuits, from my own damn reflection." "Your company?" He nodded. "I built it from my dorm room. Code, passion, nothing else. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about vision and started being about valuation. I stopped listening to people. I started buying silence. And then, they found out. Embezzlement charges against my CFO. SEC investigation. Everyone blamed me. Maybe they were right. That night I couldn't sleep. His words haunted me. I'd cared for patients dying from illness, injury. But this was different. Callum had been dying from regret. The next few weeks his strength returned. He insisted on walking without a cane, refused help with meals, even started doing rehab exercises during off hours. One night I brought him a chessboard. "You look like the brooding type," I teased. "Bet you play silently and win viciously." He cracked his first real smile. "You're not wrong." We played until midnight. He beat me 6 games in a row, but every time he moved a piece, I could see the fog in his eyes clear just a little more. Then came the day he was discharged. He stood in his own clothes, holding a signed release form in one hand and a fresh cane in the other. I walked him to the elevator. Neither of us spoke. Finally, as the doors opened, he turned to me. "I don't know what comes next," he said. "I don't even know who I am outside of a boardroom anymore." "You're still healing," I said gently. He nodded. "But if I ever figure it out, will you let me find you?" I smiled sadly. "You know where to look." He stepped into the elevator. I turned and walked away before the doors closed. If I'd looked back, I might not have let him go. Weeks passed, then months. No calls, no letters, just silence. I told myself it was better this way. He needed space to rebuild. I went back to my shifts, to my routines, to pretending I wasn't waiting for a ghost in a suit to knock on my door and ask me how the weather was today. But that knock never came, until the day the invitation arrived. To Isla Mendez, from Rhodes Group, Private Division. Subject, personal invitation. You once told me second chances are made, not given. I've built one. Come see for yourself. Column inside. The envelope was a plane ticket to San Francisco. First class, one way, and a note with just 3 words. Room 203 awaits. I didn't even pack a suitcase. Just grabbed the ticket, my purse, and a prayer. The plane ride was a blur. I kept glancing at the note in my coat pocket, tracing the words like they were sacred scripture. Room 203 awaits. It was the room where he had been silent for months, where he first called me by my name, where he confessed the truth of his downfall. And now, it was my destination again. But this time, the man inside wouldn't be broken. He had built something. When I landed, a driver was waiting, polite, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, holding a sign that simply read, Isla. We drove through San Francisco's bustling cityscape before veering toward a quieter coastal area. Modern buildings melted into green hills and glass innovation hubs. And then I saw it. The Haven, a sprawling glass and concrete campus nestled among pine trees, clean lines, solar panels, rooftop gardens. It looked less like a tech company and more like a futuristic sanctuary. When I stepped inside, my breath caught. Every wall shimmered with soft lighting. Art made by local disabled children hung proudly near the entrance. There were no cubicles, no cold corporate air, just openness, warmth. And then I saw him. He stood at the far end of the lobby. No cane, no IVs, no hospital band, just Callum. Hair slightly longer, beard neatly trimmed, dressed in a simple navy sweater, slacks and white. Sneakers, like a man reborn. When our eyes met, he smiled. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. You came, he said. How could I not? He gave me a tour. This place, he said, waving his hand, was built from my last dollar. I sold everything that tied me to Nexora. Every car, condo, yacht, gone. This is what I chose instead. I looked around. What is it exactly? A startup incubator. But not for the next social app or crypto coin, he said. This is for people who were never given a first chance. Single mothers, former inmates, war veterans, kids from shelters. He gestured to the transparent workrooms. Inside, teams of young people worked on devices, apps, solar panels, even prosthetic limbs. I fund their dreams, teach them business, and in return, they promise to use their success to lift someone else up. My heart swelled. You built a future, I whispered. He looked at me, softer now. No, you did. That evening, he took me to the rooftop garden. We sat on a bench overlooking the Pacific, the sky melting into sherbet colors. I wanted to tell you something that day. When I left, he began. You don't owe me. I do, he interrupted, his voice thick. That room, those nights, your voice. It didn't just keep me alive. It reminded me I was human. You never saw the billionaire. You just saw the man. That saved me. I bit my lip. I missed you, Callum. He smiled. I know. A gentle wind passed between us. Then, from his jacket pocket, he pulled out a small, folded paper. It was the first chess move we'd played in the hospital. The pawn to e4. He'd saved it. I want to play again, he said. I laughed. Do you ever let someone else win? For you, he said, taking my hand. Always. We played through the night, between laughs and moves and long silences. Filled with meaning, I saw the man he had become, no longer a king in a cold empire, but a shepherd of dreamers. Weeks passed. He invited me to stay longer, then to join the Haven's small health wing. Then one morning, he walked into my clinic room holding a ring box. I don't have a fancy title anymore, he said, but I have a heart that only beats when you're near. He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, and the original hospital badge I wore the day he spoke his first words. I don't need a crown, he whispered. I need you. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The day of the launch came faster than I expected. Callum had spent 2 years pouring his soul into the Haven, mentoring, funding, dreaming, and building from the ashes of the man he once was. Now, it was time to take it public, not for profits, but for purpose. That morning, I found him on the balcony of our apartment above the Haven's new headquarters. He stood barefoot, in a white shirt, sipping black coffee as the city buzzed quietly below. I wrote the speech, he said, eyes focused on the horizon. I walked to his side. You're going to change lives today. He shook his head. You already changed mine. The launch event was held in a glass amphitheater on the Haven grounds. Every chair was filled. Young founders, struggling single parents, educators, social workers, and investors from all over the country who had finally taken notice of this silent revolution. I watched from the front row as Callum stepped onto the stage. No teleprompters, no flashy slides, just him, a spotlight, and a story the world hadn't heard. My name is Callum Rhodes, he began. Years ago, I was the youngest billionaire in Silicon Valley. I built a company worth billions and nearly destroyed everything chasing more. A pause. I lost myself. Then one night I drove into a storm, hoping it would all disappear. And it almost did. The room was still. But someone found me. Someone who didn't care about my past or my bank account. She didn't ask what I owned. She just asked if I wanted to walk again. His eyes found mine. I said yes. That one word began the rest of my life. He shared the truth about Nexora, the scandal, the fall, about the hospital, the coma, the silence, and then about us. I was cared for by a woman who gave me nothing but honesty and humanity. She reminded me what it means to build, not for power, but for people. That is why I created the Haven. Applause roared. But Callum wasn't done. He invited 3 young founders to the stage. A single mother creating a childcare tech app, a teen refugee building low-cost prosthetics, and a veteran developing AI to detect early signs of PTSD. They're why we're here, he said. They are the billionaires of tomorrow, not just in wealth, but in impact. He ended with this. I once thought I needed more money to feel alive, but all I ever needed was someone who saw me when I was invisible, and a chance to become the man I was always meant to be. After the event, people lined up to thank him, but he left the stage, walked past the crowd, and came straight to me. In front of the whole auditorium, he knelt down, not with a ring this time, but with a small engraved plaque. It read, Room 203, the place where silence ended and life began. We married in that same hospital garden. No press, no glitz, just our Haven family, nurses who remembered, and the patients Callum had inspired through his visits. When I walked down the aisle, he whispered, I knew, even in that coma, your voice was home. We moved into a quiet house by the ocean, not far from the Haven. He still rose early every morning, brewed strong coffee, and took long walks to think. I started a mental wellness wing at the Haven. He funded therapy scholarships for caregivers. We wrote a book together, The Billionaire Who Forgot Everything But Love. Years later, as we watched our daughter play with the kids of Haven's new families, Callum turned to me and said, Do you realize, Isla? Your kindness built this empire. I leaned on his shoulder. No, I whispered. We built it. Epilogue Callum never returned to the Forbes list. But he didn't need to. He appeared on the cover of Time instead, under the headline, From Silent to Seen, the billionaire who chose redemption over revenge. The Haven now exists in 5 countries. Every entrance bears the same words, carved in steel above the doors. You are more than your worst mistake. And every time I walk past room 203 at the Seattle hospital, I stop, smile, and remember that even the quietest souls, when shown love, can rise to change the world.